can lead to AIDS. And, some people only have to take one HIV med. Some people have to take like 7 or 8 of them. I worked in a jail for 10 years, a correctional facility, and there was one guy in there, I think he took like 7 or 8 HIV meds, and he was pretty healthy, but his HIV meds, and a lot of these people in jail, they don't have jobs, they don't have insurance, so it's like in order to be able to afford these HIV meds, I don't know how much it would be with insurance, but he said that they cost him like 25, he was on public aid welfare, he said that they were like 25,000 a month, not a year, a month. And that is just outrageous. And, again, I think that's another way of the government kind of, keeping you alive, trying to make, more regulation, trying to make more money off of people. And, as far as technology is going, like with cancer, we don't really seem to know more about it now than we did 20, 30 years ago. And it does seem like people are getting cancer more now than ever before, especially young people. It used to be only old people were getting it, but now it's like kids are getting it, teenagers. I know several, like 4 or 5 girls I went to high school with, in their mid-30s, late 30s, and they all have breast cancer. And I don't know for sure, everybody has their theories, but since technology is advanced, with all this cancer, all these new cancer cases keep coming up. It's either one or the other, a combination of both. But I think it has to do with either the technology that we're exposed to on a daily basis. Everybody has a cell phone now, maybe the Wi-Fi, or something in the food, which, now like meat, they're, produce pesticides. They're giving all these animals, these cows, these chickens, pigs, they're giving them all these growth hormones, steroids, antibiotics. Same thing in dairy products. That's the other thing too. I would prefer to eat all organic, because they don't organic food. It doesn't have any pesticides, no steroids, no hormones, no growth hormones, antibiotics. I would prefer to eat that way, but to be able to afford to eat antibiotic, I'm sorry, to be able to afford to eat organic, to avoid all this crap, it's really expensive. And I just don't feel like spending the money on that. But yeah, everybody has their theories. I don't know about now, but I know I got my first cell phone in 2001, and I know that there was like some theories back then that listening to, talking on a cell phone, like my dad said, make sure you keep your phone charged battery charged as much as possible, because he said that there was like growing evidence that listening or talking on a cell phone that had a low battery, there was like some evidence that could lead to brain tumors, brain cancer. I'm not sure if that was just a theory or it was already proven. Obviously, cell phones have improved a lot over the last nearly 20 years. But yeah, I definitely feel like, like 9/11, I still believe that was an inside job. There was so many, that's another video, but there was so much evidence that, it seemed somebody was behind it, and I wouldn't be surprised if the government was involved in it. There's just so many fish, especially the guy that owned the World Trade Center. There's just so many things that just don't add up, smell really fishy, seem really suspicious. Just a couple of things, like for example, obviously it was in September 2001, I think it was in April or May or March of 2000 that the owner of the World Trade Center, he's constructed, he came up with like blueprints. He started coming up with construction plans for the new World Trade Center, which that's kind of suspicious. And then 6 months before, I think it was in March, April, or May of 2001, we already had insurance against like possible terrorist attacks. But yeah, just 6 months before, he doubled his insurance policy against terrorist attacks. That really seems suspicious. And President Bush, there were warnings that at the time that 9/11 was going to happen. He ignored the warnings, and he also, when he was notified that it happened, he showed like no emotion at all. It was just like, oh well. He didn't seem like surprised at all. And so again, it just seemed like the government. I don't trust the government, and especially like with Trump, for example, he is making enemies with our allies, our friends, but yet he is all of a sudden, making friends with our enemies. Russia's been an enemy of ours for many years. He is like buddies with Vladimir Putin, and then Korea has always been a threat to us. And he's made, buddies with, without even permission. He went to Korea, and, he's a buddy with that Kim Jong-un or whatever his name is. But, getting back to the economy, baby boomers are starting to get old. They're going to pass away. But probably in the next 20, 15, 20, 30 years, some of them are starting to pass away now. The U.S. population, due to that, people aren't having as many kids as they used to, so it almost seems like the government is trying to plan for that. They're trying to get more revenue, more income, because people aren't having as many kids as they used to. I mean, now people are having like 2 or 3 kids, and that's about it. My mom came from a family of 8. She's got 7 siblings, and that was the norm back then. That was common, but now that is very, very uncommon. People can't afford to do it. And even if you could afford to do it, that's a lot of work. And just think about it would be like a nightmare. But yeah, there's just more. The more time has gone on in my life, it just seems like there's more separation of classes. And from what my dad said, it basically all started back in the 80s with the Reagan era. It just seems like, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. It just seems like the middle class is starting to kind of slowly diminish. And, eventually, I don't know, the middle class may not exist anymore. It may be that you'll either be rich or you're going to be struggling financially. You're going to be poor. But yeah, it just seems like the gap between the rich and the poor keeps, I wish it would kind of close in, but it keeps going, keeps going farther out. And yeah, from what I heard, Reagan was the one that pretty much, that's when it really started to take off, the separation classes. And, it's like if I were to use one word to describe America, it would just be greed, especially corporate America. Corporations are so greedy. Walmart's a perfect example. And, with the recession, I kind of wondered about that. A lot of companies had to make do with less during the recession. And I oftentimes wondered about that. I said, obviously the economy recovered for the most part, but I started thinking about that, once the economy gets better, are these companies going to, start rehiring? Are they going to bring more of these people back that they got rid of? Or are they just going to continue to make do with less? And it seems like a lot of, due to advancement of technologies too, but companies are making do with less. Walmart, for example, they used to have cashiers and baggers, but now the cashiers have to do a bag as well as, running the items off. Not only have to do that, but they also have the bag too. So and they don't have, even when they're busy, they hardly have any, at least the one I go to, there's so many registers that aren't open. And they didn't used to have self-checkout, but now they have self-checkout. And a lot of times, like if you go there at night, they don't have any registers open. It's like everybody has to do self-checkout. And, I'm not sure about now, but I know years ago that they're like one of the richest corporations in America, but yet they treat their employees like crap. A lot of their employees are part-time because they don't want to pay benefits, and they promise a lot of people that we'll give you full-time, so you can get benefits, you can get insurance, and for a lot of people, it never happens. And, I'm not sure about now, but I know like years ago I had heard that like 90% of their employees are on government assistance. That's pretty sad. And at one point, the town I used to live in back in Illinois, the Walmart that I live near, they were actually organizing the food drive for their employees for like Thanksgiving or Christmas. I thought to myself, yeah, that's kind of good in a way, but at the same time, I'm thinking, why don't you just pay your employees a fucking living wage, so in that way they can afford to buy their own food. They won't need a food drive. They pay close to minimum wage or barely over it. And like I said, they're not hurting at all. They're one of the top corporations in America and have been for many years now. And gas prices are more under control, but they were out of control for so many years. But we depend. We can't really control that a whole lot because we depend on foreign country, the Middle East, for especially Saudi Arabia. I believe this is where a majority of our oil comes from. So since we depend on foreign countries for oil, can't really control that. But it's good that that's more under control now. It was so out of control years ago, especially during the recession. That was when the gas prices were the worst I ever saw in America. But we got, start thinking about that. Like, why don't we start to drill our own oil? I know there's not a lot of land, but it's like where there is, let's start to do some drilling of our own, which we are. There's, I don't know if it's Canada, but I know there's certain spots, some open land up in North Dakota where we get oil from, and I think there are some more areas, open land down in Texas where they drill now. So yeah, at least Texas and North Dakota. And I don't know if we get any of our oil from Canada. I'm not sure on that. But I think that's a way that gas prices have gone down a little bit, is we drill some more of our own oil yet, but we still don't have a whole lot of oil. We don't have a whole lot of open land, so we depend on the Middle East for a lot of our oil. And banks is another thing. Banks were a big part of the recession. They were giving people loans. That was mainly, they were mainly responsible for the housing crisis. They were giving people loans that they couldn't afford to begin with, even when times were good. So then when the economy tanked, when the recession hit, people really, really were underwater. And I don't know about now, but I heard a couple years ago that, there's talk about, especially if Trump gets reelected, if he goes on, they're predicting, I'm not sure how bad it'll be. I'm hoping it won't be as bad as the last one, the recession of from 2007 to 2009, but they're predicting a recession next year, 2020, especially if Trump gets reelected. And, it sounds like these banks are kind of doing the same things that got them into, the mess that they got into in the first place. They're still giving people loans that they shouldn't be giving loans to, or loans that they can't afford, but you kind of should plan for a rainy day. And it's like, times are good, better now. Unemployment's the lowest it's been in this country since the Bill Clinton era, like 20 years ago, back in 2000, 2001. But it's like, people aren't planning for a rainy day. If another recession hits, we're going to get into the same mess that we got into all over again. People need to learn, and they don't seem like they're learning. That's what I'm doing. I'm planning, times are good right now, but I'm living below my means. I am making